This work session to order at 9:07. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Director Pettit.
I'm here.
Director Story.
Here.
Director Pearson.
Here.
Director Sarno.
Here.
And Director Reed is here. Okay. Budget.
We'll start with that. So in front of you have our, what we hope will be our close to final version of our draft proposed budget, which we look to certify on or approve on Wednesday. What we've got, a couple updates from the last board meeting. We talked about it. We kind of went down the track of what we looked at as our option one, which was basically knowing that we're going to need to propose a balanced budget and adopt a balanced budget by the December board meeting, knowing that there's still work that's being done through James Vincent to help us kind of get the total numbers of looking at where we've been from that historical looking back they're about 5 to 6 years back on that, so that we can kind of look at what we really need to do to make the changes necessary to get us to a point where we can start to support building some reserves, taking care of the rebate, and then continuing to support the operations and the basic needs of the district. Couple changes from that. I started to share. You'll notice that we'll talk about a little, but we've proposing doing the 15.070 mil, and then what we do with that difference is what we'll adjust that down there. But we've used that in there, but we're factoring in the property tax revenue based off the 14.999. And there was a slight change to the property valuation that just came in from the county, which reduced what we were working off of before by about $2,000. So we've lowered that by about $2,000 and then made the changes in there. From the revenue side, there's a couple items that we've put into there. So you'll see $25,000 in wildland firefighting, and the way we're kind of factoring that piece of it in is really just counting that as the net reserves that would come out of potential wildland deployments. So what's hard to estimate, and even having that discussion about putting it into the budget, typically our wildland revenue is higher, but the true net is difference of the
Right.
personnel, equipment, and that type of thing. So, talking with most other agencies, they feel like it's somewhere between a 15 to 20% revenue is what you tend to see off of actual wildland deployments. So it's hard to calculate from there, but we did that. We've got a couple grants that are in the works right now, so we have 70,000 in grants right now, which again, it's from where we started with, it was less conservative, but we'll see where we project from there and making the adjustments based on going forward.
So a substantial reduction in the UC Health lease.
Yes, so they are with them moving out of the facility, they're not going to renew the lease for the building. Initially, with the last couple budget working documents that we looked at, we'd completely taken that out, but I'd had discussion with them that their lease goes through, we're not sure if it's to the end of March or end of April, somewhere in there, but they're going to make the payments through the rest of the lease period, which will at least be a couple payments into the first part of the year. So all I factored in right now is two payments. There may be three, but with that, with the changes they're looking to deployment, they did not want to renew the lease, being that they're looking to have.
So that means then they'll house it maybe at their discretion.
Yeah, so they with their changes to their deployment, they don't have any 24-hour cars in anywhere in the NL Sarah contract piece right now. So they're not having any overnight staffing on there. So they've moved posts around from there. So one of the posts is a Wellington post. They're doing basically by GPS coordinates. So that Wellington post is the intersection at Cleveland and 6th. But they can post anywhere within that half mile of where that is. So and we've shared with them that they're welcome to come and do that. Since it started on the 1st, we haven't actually, to our knowledge, seen that. But that dynamic deployment, it's kind of a moment in time having to sort of check and see where units are being dispatched from. The calls that we've had since that started, it seems like they've been coming maybe from either the Station 12 area coming up that way, or they've been coming off of like Mulberry and 25 area coming from that way. So they've got 17 identified dynamic deployment posting locations, which Wellington is one. They've got the Highway 1, not at 15, but just a little farther down. So they're doing basically Douglas and Highway 1, and then the Station 12 area over there. So, and then they're using the Budweiser facility to post as well. So.
Do we have any way to track their arrival times?
Well, we do on all of our calls. That's recorded, and that's part of the contract compliance. So we'll get overall numbers through that, but we can look at individual calls as well.
I'd be real curious to see what happens with that.
Yeah, and so part of what we're doing too, and working with Brett right now to kind of work through more of a procedural piece for us for our officers to know, if they feel like the call was delayed, if they feel like there was any anomaly, they didn't answer the radio when they were supposed to, they didn't switch over to the right radio channels, any of those things, so that they can report that, so Brett can do the follow-up with that specific to each individual incident. And then there is a process that's already in there for us to file the complaint, if you will, through the NL-SARA contract website page that allows them to investigate into that.
Well, in the contract, is there an arrival time? Does it specify?
Well, there is, based off of the priority of the call.
Okay.
So there is there's different windows based off from a more emergent, so a Delta Echo type call, and longer response times for an Alpha type call.
Well, I think if that's publicized, that's going to be at our end to having them renew the contract. If they get outpouring of, hey, this is where we were, this is where we're at, if it's a big difference, I think people are going to start screaming, I hope,
Yeah.
if
So-
that happens.
Yeah, and
They are national standards, and when we did our first share, we did a link to that, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and it will be, part of us looking to that whole piece will be continuing to monitor that and what their contract compliance is for that. And then hopefully from us, what the anticipation would be as we start to see those, any significant changes in that, or any instances of them not meeting the compliance. And we're captured in the whole piece of what we call the Zone 1, so we're captured in that whole piece of it. So they've got to maintain 90% on time within that Zone 1, and what we're going to really watch for is make sure that they're not meeting that overall compliance in Zone 1, but having a lower level of compliance to the calls up in our area, because we're batched into the whole Zone 1 piece for that. So kind of watch from that side of it to decide if we have any options from there. So, and it's, for us, just so we're kind of talking the same language, it would be more than just a renewal. We'd have to enter, if we want to do that, we'd have to enter into looking into our own contract, separate from the NL-SARA contract.
Which
So,
would probably be better, actually.
yeah, so that depends what that would look like, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And as far as just other items from the budget perspective, we've taken a really hard look at where we are budgets for actuals for this year, and tried to be as accurate as we can on that. Obviously, getting us to a balanced piece of this is really simply that. We're just balancing with still not taking much into account for anything for contingencies, anything for reserves. It does take care of the pension, but that's something that we're going to need to really look at when we look at what the total numbers look out for us, and what it's going to take to get us to the point where we can start doing that. So what we'd anticipate is hopefully within the next couple weeks, is they're pretty much done with gathering all the data. They've gotten through that part of it. They're mocking it up for us so that we can actually take a look at what our trend was, what we did over each of the last 5 years, getting us to where we are through this year and where we are year to date, and then start to look at some projections. If we change this, what would we anticipate at the end? And so really for us is going to put basically a stake in the ground to what do we want to try to accomplish this year and the next subsequent years to get us to those goals of being able to build the reserves, take care of the rebate, and get us to the point where we can support some operational things from there. And so that'll help us get a number in our head to what that looks like, and then we can look at the time frame of moving those things forward and implementing whatever changes from there. What that would look like in in our process would be deciding on what those look like, and then doing an amended budget and adopting an amended budget. January might be too early, but February probably, just from a timing piece of what it would take to get those answers done and then to float through what those look like. But we'll know more once we get through that. So that's kind of what the time frame, I guess, we'll look at doing that adopted budget amendments that come around that time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's. Look at the whole. Got enough.
So the property values are stayed the same this year as last year, assessed value. So this
Yeah.
year they'll reassess, right?
Right.
And then we'll see
Every
that
other
a year
year.
later.
Yeah.
So the only reason this is higher is because of the higher, little higher mill levy.
Yeah.
So that's probably really gonna,
And then it'll be kick in the rear, so, yeah.
so that's probably gonna be a pretty good increase come, because I think
The
property
next time.
values are,
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, from what you pay, you go, ouch, when you see from that.
What Ashley brought up, and I was just double checking the numbers to make sure that was right. So on the wages and salaries on the admin, the 605,100, you see it's 493 is what's proposed. So that's reflective of actual salaries, but also we incorporated the fire chief range of the 140 to 160
Oh,
and
okay.
budgeted at the 160.
Okay.
So that's where it is. So
The what now? You said
the admin, the 605.100,
Mhm.
you see it's 493 for, proposed for 2022,
Mhm.
464 for 2021, so it's
Mhm.
reflective of the actual current salaries, but also accounting for the fire chief at the 160 range, because the proposed range was,
Right.
for the interim was 140 to 160.
Okay.
It's 140 now, but that's what you're paying, but it's 160 is the range, so.
Okay. Gotcha. So the firefighter wages, the reduction, is that because a reduction in the number?
It's just it's accounting for the fact that we're not at full staff.
Okay.
And so we anticipate working towards that, but we're also, we've seen.
It's just a pure
We
num-
watched the
it's just a
window.
pure numbers.
Yeah, just the pure numbers of, we've been rolling through the time of having at least 1 or 2 vacancies in
Yeah.
order to fill and
Yeah.
do that.
Okay.
So what ends up happening, if we look at it, and we haven't, we bumped the number up in the wages overtime because of the 55 and the 65 that were budgeted the last couple of years. We've pretty much been on track for at least the last 3 years of 95,000 or so in overtime almost every year, looking at that. And that starts to kind of get reflective of, as we're down on positions.
numbers, yeah.
We end up with a little bit more overtime.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So
The other thing that's reflective in this is we've been overstrength on 2 lieutenants since about April when they, May-ish when they did the promotions. They overhired 2 lieutenants and been down 2 on driver operators. And we recognize we're gonna have to make a change to balance that piece out. There's not any anticipation of opening additional companies or doing anything that would support having the additional lieutenants in that place. And so we'll have to evaluate the proper ones that look at how we move 2 of them back down to, and which are the right 2 to move back down to the lieutenant.
Because
from
there
the
were
lieutenant to the driver
9, if I
operator.
remember right?
There's 9, correct.
So then you go from 9 to 7,
Correct.
essentially?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then right now we have 3 driver operators, so moving 2 down gets us to 5, so fire engineers.
Yeah. Okay.
So we need to look at that piece. And get us more properly balanced in the right ranks.
Hopefully fuel costs won't keep going.
Yeah, it did bump up. We're closer to budget this year, but we know that the costs have started to go up. So I think that reflecting at 19,000 is really should be pretty accurate, but based off depending what happens with the actual cost of it. And a couple things with apparatus. Maintenance and that kind of thing. It's up from where we did it last year, but reflective of what we're at this year. We've had a few things that radiator, some other repairs that have come through that have us over this projected budget even right now. So that's something we probably really need to take a real hard look at how we when we incorporate the changes we make have to look at either adding more into the contingencies to do that or putting more into that just to recognize that that's probably where the reality is gonna be. We're just watching the mileage and age of the fleet get a bit older and a bit older.
Yeah.
And so in the capital budget, which doesn't reflect on here, we've worked on getting the little bit more stronger lines on what a 5-year plan looks like for apparatus. Just recognizing that I'll have to have a bit more of a discussion because lead times now with supply and everything else, they're at 2 years now. So I have to have for new apparatus.
Oh,
So
that's amazing.
So I have to kind of take a hard look at where we're at and if we start a process earlier to get us where we're planning or if we what that looks like.
Yeah. How do you balance
Yeah,
that?
exactly. And we're seeing the same thing just even on repairs and that type of stuff. We'll have our fingers crossed that the battalion truck will be back here very soon because they did finally get the last parts they had. Got all put back together, suspension stuff done. It's running under its own power and they're just getting it now finally back into frame again just to make sure everything's alignment and all that done. And they're finishing up with paint on parts that have been off to do that. So I'm hoping, but just seeing that stuff. PFA who's been doing maintenance on the rigs. They've got stuff sitting out that they need to work on from, they're doing stuff for them, some for Windsor, some for us. They're just waiting on parts so often and the turnaround time of almost everything is much, much longer.
So I just have a couple of
Sure.
questions.
Yes.
On loan interest, do we have any idea what we paid this
Paid.
year?
Let me grab it. I can tell you where we're at.
Yeah, it's, I feel like I can remember that. Hell, I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but I remember reading it, but I don't know.
And my other question, Ashley, that just popped in my head. When we have to pay a deductible, like on the truck that's being repaired, what does that come out of?
Usually out of the insurance line.
Okay.
So that should come out of the property and liability insurance. But Director Pettit, I can't tell you if that's where it currently is coming from, but
Okay.
that's where it should be.
Where it should
coming
be.
from.
I almost wonder if we need a little separate line for that, since it seems to be happening.
Well, ideally, we wouldn't need
More.
that very often.
But that's, yeah.
But I know what you
Yeah, I know,
mean,
yeah.
but, it would be nice if we wouldn't ever need it, but in the event that we would, I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it should come out of the 600.514 line, according to justification. Unless it's a workers' comp,
Right,
and then the workers' comp would come out of the 142.
okay.
We have a loss control officer that's going to be coming in to visit with us in the next 30 days, and our training chief. to do an audit on our policies, practices, and procedures and give some tips, and then that'll also help keep our workers' comp and property and liability insurance down in 2022 in that renewal funds. By having them come out and going through their program and their training, that helps give them the confidence that we're following good guidelines to keep those costs down.
We're doing everything we can to keep costs at a minimum. And
Yes,
that's
sir.
one of the things we can do then to show them that we're doing, okay.
Yes.
I have one that's the end of the month that I thought it was at my fingertips. I don't have it, but right now it's $4,749.
Have we heard about that loan?
We're anticipating by the 15th, probably the latest. They're going through the process of getting all the stuff together. They had the note on this building was clear. They've got that. I think they needed to just take a few photos and did that. And the last was, there was an email from Kelly saying they should be in touch this week to finish the last bit of stuff that we need to do for that. So we're with kind of holding everything tight. We're in a place where we'll still be able to do that, but that's about the time frame that we're looking at. So we've gotten farther down the road with the funds that we have currently now. So we received all of our YLAM money, so all of that is in. So for
That's
for
good.
both those, so that's all been received, and we're looking at kind of anticipating probably in and around 15,000 or so more in the specific ownership tax on the 10th. You get that, just kind of trending. We'll be looking at trending 2020 versus 2021, and we received about 15,000 in November and in December. So we'll get the November it's on the 10th of this month, but we won't get the other one until January, which will credit that. But
Right.
so from
Every little bit helps.
yeah.
The county is showing for the specific ownership trends that people are continuing to buy new cars, and even the cost of used cars prices going up. They do not anticipate that revenue going down. They're anticipating generous increases through 2022 and 2023.
And we had budgeted 185 this year, and currently with where we're at, we're anticipating we'll probably be right in the range of 205 to 209 received this year. So in this budget, we had initially started down at around 190, trying to be a little more conservative, pushed it just a little bit to 198, which if that trend holds true, we should be good on what we've anticipated. And if we at least meet what we did this year, we'll be somewhere in that, we'll call it 210 range somewhere. So. So we do have from the contract services, you'll see there's 55,000 in there, and that would cover the, right now we're factoring in for the normal services that we provide, do that, which is our IT consultant, copier services, website security, that kind of thing, but we'll also have some money factored in for the fire chief recruitment process. So for the below it, then you'll see the election expenses at a separate line item. We'll still add it into there. So depending where we go from there, at least accounting for those in there.
So is this the time to say this? The fire chief recruitment seems unnecessary to me.
And from a budgetary place, at least as a placeholder for there, it's probably wise to do that. And then, again, we're not factoring much in for contingencies or anything else. And depending what the final decision from the board is, you look to do that and make a final decision. It's factored into there for us to be able to work around that. And if it doesn't come to fruition, that you look to spend that or do some hybrid type of version where you're contracting with something to help do a portion of the
If I
process.
remember right, that was the maximum amount of the 3 firms that we looked at.
Yeah, we have it as a discussion item later on in the agenda to talk specifically about the chief recruitment firms. to see if the board would be interested in, we've received the express desire to delay the process. And that gives us an opportunity to kind of take a pause and plan to have presentations from the 3 firms to talk about, if you guys want to ask questions about range of services or the necessity to have a recruitment firm, and kind of give us a pause moment as we move into the first of the year, because our interim chief, it does have a timeline restriction on it, and then we would have to do another interim recruiting process. So we wanted to give an opportunity that if the board wanted to have formal presentations from the recruitment firms, to provide a platform for that. One of the recruiting firms did request the opportunity to provide some public comment at the Wednesday board meeting. So when we move down the agenda, we can come back to that and talk about it further if you'd like.
Okay.
And like you said, if it doesn't come to fruition, there's some money that's allocated in there that can be, if we look at doing a budget amendment or how we do that, it could be, could be moved to contingency, or we can make a decision on, if we don't expend it that much, what's the direction on what we do with that? What's the recommendation? So move it into contingencies or use it for, we'll talk about election services, those kind of things. If other numbers change, we can specifically allocate that money to something else if it doesn't come to use it that way.
Okay. Saves us having to do an amended
going the other
budget,
direction.
Yeah. Looks good to me.
Yeah, that looks good to me too.
Hopefully we'll have that election expense to play with too.
Yeah, we'll talk about that coming up too.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's, we factored in, it's at 28. I think we had run probably right in that range of that top end, I think, of what the other firms.
Right.
So there's one minor change that's going to happen to this, and Kelly had found out last week, and I forget if it's FICA, one of the employee-related expense factors that they calculate. It's went up by 0.03, so it's going to be 6 instead of 6, it's 6.03 or something like that. So it'll have a real nominal change to that, but we will. She's going to put it in the right place so that the calculations that it's doing in our budget should come that way. So we'll have to make one minor adjustment to that, which I suppose probably we should have that done Monday morning to be able to do that. And then if we need to make any other slight adjustments based off of making sure that it's balanced, then we can go from there. And then we'll have that
Perfect.
ready for Wednesday.
Okay.
So on the training,
Yes.
will be just, how does that?
Sure, yeah, as it all kind of factor in from there. So there's a couple numbers from there. So we, the health and safety side of it, you see the lines going up in there. We use that really to reflect. I have to look and see because I don't have the QuickBooks details specifically on that. But looking at what we've been spending on, it's a pretty accurate number based off of what we've realistically and actually been spending on in all those categories. There's a couple moderate increases on a couple things. So the firefighter training has gone up a little bit. The staff, I looked for it to be significantly increased, but based off of the numbers and where we're at. The other thing to see is the Firefighter 1 Academy has kind of been in we've seen some different numbers there. We budgeted 60, then last year we didn't budget any, and what we've actually spent is a smaller amount. We're going to, with the firefighter that we hired recently, Chris Clausen, that went through the academy, we'll end up reimbursing him for his Ames fees. That was part of the way he paid for his academy training at Ames, and then we'll reimburse him for the cost of that academy, which is, we'll call it right in the range of about $7,000 is what we'll do for this year based off of that, which technically wasn't really budgeted in for that piece of it. We've had discussions just with staff going forward about what we're actually encountering in the hiring processes with the way the region's been hiring and the timing that goes in with hiring of those, we know there's a couple of our folks that are in processes right now, and so depending what happens with that, typically so many of our agencies hire and start around the same time that the smaller agencies that lose people at a time where you don't have an option then to put them into, say, the Ames Academy or be a part of another academy just simply because of timing. So we've had discussions about how are we successful in recruiting and hiring, and one of the thoughts is looking at the Ames Academy's cycle of the graduation in the winter and a graduation in the spring, and looking at doing our recruitments around that time frame, and looking at it would lessen our pool, but looking at only entertaining applicants that have their firefighter one, their hazmat operations, and EMT. It gives us this smaller pool. We're moving through the hiring process right now for 2 to replace. We're down 3 firefighters, and so we've got 1 that will start tomorrow, and then 1 as we finish through there that's a paramedic now, but meets all the qualifications. They've got all their certifications, so it wouldn't entail actually running them through the fire academy, and just looking at that opportunity of, that might mean doing more frequent processes to keep a valid list, but looking at that piece,
Makes sense.
in the time period, it's not just us. Platte Valley, Windsor, Front Range, Platteville, Gilcrest, they're encountering the same type of things. If their people get hired into one of the larger agencies, it happens at a time frame where now they can't take somebody off a list and decide to get them into Ames, because that's already happened. And so the opportunity for other academies other than just doing something in-house, it's challenged by that time frame. So you end up with a vacancy that you would otherwise have to carry until the next semester, if you will, and get them enrolled in that piece of it. So what we look to do going forward from a Firefighter One Academy budget might change the way we budget it to more, just training or that type of thing, or calling that, doing the training that's associated with that. But it's just kind of the reality of what we're seeing. Like I said, if we do lose 1 or 2 of our folks to the agencies that are hiring and will be starting late February, they'll probably get their final notices early February or end of January type of thing. So we'll be in a spot where it'll be too late to get them into Ames or do something like that. So we'll have to look at our list of
Have this whole
qualified.
domino effect.
Exactly.
You've been around other departments a lot. I'm sure a lot of departments are really feeling the crunch.
Yeah.
Because we were very fortunate that our mill levy was increased, and that we're kind of hit under the right now, but I'm sure a lot of these little departments budgets got to be hurting.
And then especially the ones that, on the other side of the county line there, oil and gas, if they've taken care of it and held on to it, their reserves are in a better place, but they're also watching, significant changes from, to the 30 to 40% change in their budget from last year to this year.
A lot of those mill levy increases weren't approved for a lot of towns. I know that.
They weren't.
So, it's a little different now than it was, I think, 2 years ago.
They got a little breathing room with 120 not passing this year, but it's the writing is just that there's going to continue to be those type of attempts to make adjustments and do that. And so, as they word them differently, we can just anticipate that that's a continued piece to that. And those that didn't have the foresight, like they did here with the work to be able to have that language in there to be able to adjust the mill levy to at least maintain that. There's many that aren't in that place. They'll be looking at trying, if they lose on the property tax reduction side, then having to turn back around and ask for tax increase on the other side of the reaction piece to that. So.
A revised Proposition 120 has already been submitted to the title board for consideration. So that's not going to go away. We're going to have to continue to monitor that and be prepared to make adjustments for that.
Well, I think, I was telling Steve, next year will be recession property values. So people are really going to start screaming.
Oh, boy.
Not just about us, but schools and everybody's taxes are going to go.
Everyone.
They're all going to hear it. They're going to get it.
So, it just overstates the importance of kind of taking a real hard look at where we are and looking at doing what we need to do to get ourselves in a good position. So we're we're not worried about what the end of the year looks like and scrambling to make sure we can.
Yeah, for sure.
So. Perfect, well, we'll have that, the minor modification we need to do for that, and that'll go into the packet for Wednesday.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Well, I'd like to really thank you for this,
No,
because you came in totally cold, and you've jumped in head first
You
to
know,
get up
you
to
could
speed.
almost say drinking hose or water,
Yeah.
but that's probably
yeah,
too.
yeah, staff knows, I mean, there was a gap between when Chief Green left and when I came in,
Oh.
and everyone kind of got into it and started to look into it. And going, okay,
I know a
what
lot
do-
of people helped.
What have we been doing? What do we, what's reality? What are we,
Yeah.
if we've been doing this the last couple of years, we should look at those type of things and trying to figure out how to make those numbers work, right? And we realized there's a gap. There's a gap that's there that's not being met to be able to really look at how we run this forward. So it's gonna be important for us to dive a little deeper into that when we see what those numbers can look like.
When are we gonna get that back, that audit, do you think?
Well, I think, I'm hoping to hear something this week. In fact, I talked to them last week, and they had been able to get all of the data together and put it together, so we'll have a discussion with them about looking through it and seeing if that stuff matches up. They had, I was able to get them copies of past audits to be able to match up to the QuickBooks stuff, so it's making sure that those things kind of correlate together, and so that's kind of what
Is
they're-
that something that we would have a special meeting for? I would think.
Either probably, I don't know if it'd be a special meeting, we'll see the timing of that. It could
Okay.
be, it could be during a special meeting, it could be a portion of regular meeting to that piece of it.
Because otherwise it wouldn't be to our January meeting, and I'd like to be able to look at that before.
Yeah,
that, so.
and so in the way that the firm will do that work, it really is, it's doing work to help me understand where it is, but the work will be for the board to be able to evaluate from there. So we'll have to look at what that means. In order for the whole board to be able to do that, it would have to be that. And I don't know the form yet. We're having discussions on typically how that's done. Is it done through just the initial presentation to say the president and treasurer to go and see if this is the form that works for the board, and then what that next step would look like from there. So
Okay.
that's kind of how I anticipate probably the first step would be me vetting with them just to make sure that these things make sense. And then the next step probably would be to like the president and treasurer to kind of present that
Kind of
through.
a preview.
Exactly, so that we know what they've got, and then look at a time frame on how we want to do that,
Okay.
and based off of the information that you guys have,
Okay.
would come back to be, whether it's a special board meeting or something
Yeah,
like that.
okay.
So.
All right, well, just let us know.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, as soon as I have a little more, like I said, I'm real hopeful that we'll have sort of the first swipe through stuff this
Okay.
week with them and see what that looks like.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
So, January 1 is the earliest day to file self-nomination and acceptance forms. So.
Or we do mill levy
Oh,
real
yeah.
quick, just to.
I just was.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah,
jumping
you saw the
ahead.
calendar in there, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an FYI
Yeah.
reminder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so.
So we'll have to process the mill certification, and so one of the discussions was whether we move to that 15.070, and which would get us to where it was 2 years ago, a year and a half, something about when we kind of missed that, made the changes with that that'll allow
Yep,
us to
because
do that.
the bill that we passed allows us to adjust our mill for a loss of revenue. So based off of changes to the residential assessment rate, the calculation has come out to about 15.070. And then second, we need to talk about if we want to address the rebate with this mill certification or not. So if the board would like to, we just need a little bit of direction on how to put together our mill levy certification this year for the resolution on Wednesday. Do we want to increase to the 15.070? And then do we want to take that additional revenue or that we're accounting for of about, I think it was $14,000 and dedicate that to the rebate? And if we do that, then we just need to make that adjustment to the budget that we're gonna adopt so that we can account for that loss of revenue in our future budget.
And we're still, in what we're looking at, we've calculated this proposed budget to the 14,999, but using that 1507, showing that there, but we would dedicate that towards the difference towards the rebate is how the assumption that we've made into that. We didn't change the factor that's calculating out that 3,020,000. That's still on the 14,999.
Okay. So that doesn't, so the 3,020,000 does not reflect the increase in the mill?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're showing, assuming that we would increase that to 15.07, but in the mill levy certification piece, dedicate that difference to the rebate in the way that they do the certification.
And we still owe how much? About 250?
Yes.
So it's not much, but it's not nothing.
You said it'd be about 14,000?
Yes, the board had given staff the direction to start addressing 3 goals, working on rebuilding reserves, lowering the rebate, and then addressing the pension fund to get it up to actuarial. And at the last board meeting, we presented some options to help stair-step the board towards achieving those 3 goals. And one of them was adjusting our bill to the 15.070 and then dedicating that additional or that change in revenue or that anticipated loss of revenue that we had calculated from the change in the residential assessment rate to be a rollover into addressing the rebate. So based on that assumption, we calculated this budget with the revenue anticipated without increasing the mill. So the revenue that we show in here is at that 14.999 as Chief described.
Well, it's not much, but it's doing what we want to do is start
Yeah.
paying it back. So, and since the budget is based on the 1499, I think we might as well just pay it back and start. We got to start.
Yeah.
We really have got to start paying that thing back. So,
You know, it's at least a gesture
yes, it is.
toward that repayment,
It is.
so
It is.
I guess I'm in favor of,
And moving forward with an amended budget, a balanced budget, then we get more aggressive with those 3 goals. So,
yeah. So little by little.
yeah.
So we'll prepare the mill levy certification and the resolution stuff for that for the
Wednesday meeting.
Yeah, for the
Yes.
Wednesday meeting, so that with that'll be how it'll be proposed.
Okay, thank you.
And the intent with that is as the community grows, the additional property tax revenue that's generated, it'll organically grow, and that rebate will grow organically over time and start paying itself back faster if we're diligent about dedicating this change in mill every year with our budget adoption.
Yeah, we've got that tool, so we might as well use it to its fullest extent.
Okay, so how does the moratorium on building affect us? It's got to have an effect.
Well, at least in my opinion, it's more from one would be our impact fees. So it would be a reduction in the amount of impact fees. And in the capital budget, we looked at that. We've kind of taken that into effect when we talk about the capital budget, knowing that there's only 99-ish in that range over the next couple of years of permits that will come along from the residential side, so we wouldn't anticipate as much in the impact fees on that. The other side is more, I guess, more hypothetical in the sense of if more houses were being built, then we would see our the total value coming up, but we know that'll be slower. So if we start to project the next couple of years going forward, as we look at what the next 5 years look like, we would want to continue to be conservative on the property tax end of it, at least for the next couple of years. So those two factors. And then after 2024 or 2024 going forward, we could anticipate, if everything stays on track with the wastewater treatment and the water treatment plant, that then we could foresee more of those permits coming forward, and then so an increase back into the impact fees piece, and then following that, as stuff gets built, then we could start to see the revenue trend comes up that associates with the residential assessment rate, property tax piece of that. That's as long as everything sort of stays on track, we don't end up with raw water issue type of piece that slows in it. So, but make sure I'm speaking right, but the commercial side of it, they don't, from the town piece at least, they don't have a specific sort of moratorium on that piece, but they're looking at it case by case based off of, does this commercial use, is it associated with a lot of water? Because they've got to compare that against what the capacity is of the plants right now. So, could see other commercial come in if it doesn't have a high water usage associated with that.
Yeah.
You can tie in at least a little better if that's not.
That's true. There isn't any restriction right now on commercial development. They're analyzing it on a case-by-case basis, but they're not wanting to restrict commercial development just because of the time that it takes for them to come online. And then starting in 2024, there are 1,100 homes that are anticipated to come online once that wastewater and water treatment plant are approved. So even though they've slowed down the residential growth and are limiting the building permits until 2024, the developers are preparing that once those plants come online, that there are still a significant amount of homes planning on being developed in the area. So unless there is a significant change in the market, once 2024 gets here, the growth is just going to skyrocket in this community.
Well,
And as we plan through and just kind of really watch that, it'll be important for us to, as we look at, continue to do kind of a rolling 5-year projection, see how that goes, and stay really close in touch with where things are going, when they determine what the water rates actually are and some of those things, and just really keep in touch with where the builders are at from that.
Yeah, I don't think we can count on it being like it's been in the last few years.
Yeah, I think
the growth.
Yeah,
I just don't think we can count on that.
Yeah, I'd say there's a good chance it could happen, but I think we have to really be on the back end of watching it happen before we make the moves to do that.
I wonder how much of that will move outside of city limits, though, into the county.
So
the
far
development.
done. So far, those 1,100 homes right now are pre-planned basically from County Road 58 North. They're waiting to annex those in until the water and wastewater treatment plant come online. But the development out in the county is much slower. I don't anticipate the developers moving out into the county.
Really?
What is the source of water where do they think they're going to get the water?
The town has plenty of water.
Do they?
The issue is treating the water.
Yes, I understand, but I've always heard that the source is a problem too. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that we have plenty of water for the developers, and the developers have to bring the water with them in order to build the developments. And we have the water, there's plenty of water. The town's looking at selling some of the shares of water back to Northern Cooter.
no, don't do that, don't do that.
Yeah.
You'll never get them back.
Nope.
What's the time frame again on the sewer plant and the water plant?
2024, spring of 2024.
So both of them, they have to be together to do anything?
Yes,
So
you
it's-
have to have the wastewater treatment plant online first in order to bring the water treatment plant online,
Okay.
because you have to send that residual water down somewhere.
So again, what are they anticipating growth between now and then?
So they're limiting residential building permits to 100 a year
Okay,
until 2024.
Oof, so-
Residential only.
okay.
And those permits that they're already spoken for, and they've been divided out among the developers.
But I do think we need to keep an eye on water supply, because if this weather pattern doesn't change, we're gonna be in deep stew
Yeah,
come summer.
yeah.
And
don't know what rates and that sort of thing, just,
You know, Northern Water Association still has a moratorium on taps, so that's
That's right.
absolutely
That's-
limiting growth in the county.
5 years, I think.
That's 5 years.
Well, no, I talked to one of the board members and they said there's no limit on that.
All right, one
They'll-
of them told me 5, but.
They'll
Hmm.
keep an eye on it, and when they have
supply.
supply that they feel they can do taps. But, you know, yeah, I
Don't
asked
hold your
about
breath.
that because I went on their website and looked and there was nothing there. So I happened to run into a board member and he said, no, that it was open-ended, so to speak.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay.
So
But-
is the source mostly well water, or where are they getting the raw water?
A majority of the town's raw water comes from North Poudre. About 10 to 15% comes from the wells.
So you know everybody else, like Max Hoffman, is trying to get hold of that water too. So it's not like there's plenty of water to go around for everybody.
No.
That's understandable. And there's a tier, for where they're required to deliver to first. And of course, North Poudre's primary intent of doing business is to provide water to the ag users.
Yeah.
However, if there is not enough snowpack or low water, municipality takes, priority over ag.
Yeah,
Which is what we
food.
saw in 2001, 2002.
Yeah,
There was no water for ag.
yeah. Who needs food anyway?
Yeah. Yeah, eating is overrated.
As long as you conduct business.
Yeah.
You just go to the store, you don't need food, right?
That's true, that's true.
Oh, well.
So, yeah, I would, just my opinion, but I would caution the town on selling any water. I would hang on to it for dear life.
I agree.
Yep.
Okay, just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Thank you, I'll take it back to the town.
We were unanimous
Yeah.
that they shouldn't sell it.
Hold it.
Okay,
So, election?
election update.
We made a couple of last attempts to make sure that the firm that you guys had selected, we're gonna respond, and if they wanted to be a part of it. And so we've been in touch with them. They shared contract stuff. Ashley got it, shared it with John Camille, and so let's just take a minute. Just kinda
Yes,
share
and so
where-
we
where
wanted,
it's at.
they've been inundated with requests to provide election services. There are very few firms that provide election services for special districts, only 3 or 4. And so we got a little nervous because they hadn't responded to our board action approval. We need a copy of the services agreement. We talked to them. They sent over their services agreement that'll be presented Wednesday for signature. The board did approve it through action, but, because there was that lack of response from the firm, we wanted to just kind of pause for a minute and ask some additional questions and make sure that everybody was on board to move forward. We did talk to legal counsel in the event that the firm did not respond to the approval for services, and John Camille said that, if we needed somebody in-house to be a DEO and to run the election services, that they have paralegals that could assist with that, and he didn't have any concern if I needed to fill that role as a DEO. But since they did respond to services, we did clarify with them that we only wanted to use that consulting firm to serve as the DEO for the election, but we wanted to keep as much of the administrative process in-house as we could to save on that billable hourly rate for election services. And in talking with the consultant firm, the largest cost to the district is going to be the cost of supplies, paper, postage, mailing. They shared that they're already pre-purchasing and bulking up on their buying their paper now for those ballots and things because the cost of paper is going up. Sue Blair, who we're going to recommend serve as the DEO, agreed and is willing to work with the administrative staff here to provide oversight as the DEO, so that we get the training in-house, so that next year we don't have to use a consultant firm and can keep those costs at a minimum to the district. Additionally, training is starting to come out through SDA and through Lions Gaddis
I saw that.
that we would like to send 2 of our staff people to, so that we're just on board and current with election practices, training for election judges and those sort of things. We'll also tag team with the town on as much as we can to try and save on costs. Like we'll have to post for election judges, but we'll offer to the people that are serving as election judges for the town, since they'll already have the training, to see if they want to serve here. And just really wanted to provide an update to the board about the upcoming election. So the first day that we can start receiving self-nominations forms is January 1st. We've already had one person that has reached out to the district and requested a self-nomination form or wanted more information about participating. Rachel suggested that maybe in between the first deadline for taking self-nomination forms and the final day to receive them, we have like an open house or an internal like training for meet and greet. The current board of directors have a little FAQ about what it takes to be a board member, the time commitment, things that you should be aware of, you know, if you're considering running for an election and things like that. That way we're as transparent and providing as much training about being the best board member possible for the district. So that's kind of where we're at with election services. Did I miss anything?
The only thing I'll throw in is in the discussion with the firm, is they understand that they've got a time frame, calendar time frame that you see in there. There's also an option to, you know, should we have interest, but when the time actually comes, if we don't have more candidates than we have positions, then we can cancel the contract and we will only be charged for the actual fees rendered at that point.
Yes,
$2,000-ish?
it was about $2,250.
Yeah,
Thank you.
something in that range is what they would, and by that time, what they would anticipate, and I think kind of even the way that it was written is that they wouldn't anticipate it should exceed 2,000.
Yes.
I remember contractually, there was a number that they tied in.
Okay, so the
That's
services agreement
reasonable.
is
Yeah.
a not to exceed.
That was
Yeah.
gonna be my next question,
Yeah.
because it looks like March 1st is the deadline that,
Yeah.
if we don't have any self-nominated,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Okay.
and just for the point of discussion, it seems like where we've kind of had people asking are you know, current firefighters, you know, career firefighters, and so just the thought being, and the point that Rachel raised is probably well taken, that if you're thinking about it, we should try to do what we can to at least provide an understanding of what the commitment is and that type
Right.
of thing, just even from, you know, okay, if you kind of all work together, it can limit the ability to do things together or do stuff if that's
Yeah.
what you think, or do you know, make a meeting when I can make a meeting here and there, but there's, you know, there's some things that are expected out of that, just to make sure that there's, you know.
Yeah, you know, making sure that they double check with their employer that there isn't a conflict of interest,
Mhm.
you know, taking a look at their time requirements, you know.
All those things that, yeah.
You know, it's not just a once a month thing, it's, you're dedicated, you know, 20 hours a week sometimes, or things like open meetings law and the sunshine law, where there can't be more than, you know, you can't have more than 3 of you in a room at the same time, or 2 of you.
Yeah.
So Ashley and I kind of with that, one thing we were bouncing back and forth in, you know, until we can have like that open house, as we're handing out the self-nomination forms, including like a 101 things to consider before completing this form. Have you checked with your employer? You know these rules. You are now, once you become an elected official, you are, instead of, if you are a current firefighter, maybe, you know, open records requested for your 48 hours, you're now always open. Everything that you do and say can be tied back to being, you know, attached to the fire district. So giving them that to start, and then holding a little bit larger class for people so they understand what they are getting into, versus, oh, my friend wants me to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to joke that, oh, it's only one meeting a month.
Yeah, actually, I was kind of told that. When I told people I had a board meeting this morning, and he went, Sunday morning?
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of the thing that we want them to think about, is, you know, it may go back to that, but if we have something as a district that happens, we may have to have these last minute, and, you know, what does that look like from a larger, but also, you know, public opinion these days, it's not that simple once a month, oh, you're a board member, you're now in the public all the time. So we don't want to deter people from applying.
No.
But we want to make sure that they have all of the facts.
A clear understanding of the
understanding
commitment.
of-
Yeah.
Yeah, of what this means. And, you know, once you are elected, how does that friendship, you know, so.
Yeah.
You know, I think SDA has a pretty good list of responsibilities of board members.
So
that-
Ash, we talked, she's gonna kind of go with like the ones that we've seen the most for
Yeah.
here, just kind of those
Just
really
little bullet points, yeah.
And then she's gonna send them over to me, and I'm gonna put them together nice and pretty, so come January 1st, when they can start doing that and start collecting, they'll have both.
But we also want to give them an opportunity to meet, you know, current board members
Yeah.
and get, you know, that firsthand experience, and, you know, they could be, you know, you guys could all be working together in the sandbox here in a few months, so.
Oh, boy.
Well, that'll scare them off.
Yeah, that might do it.
But, yeah, I mean, yes, you guys have experience, you know, you have an idea of what it's like, but you don't really know until you're there in the seat. And then that responsibility
Yeah.
is like you're the end of the line. And that, you know, is, it's different when your social media and your day-to-day conversation is subject to
All that,
scrutiny.
yeah.
But the worst thing would be to lose one of the three to someone new, and then 2 months down the road, they disappear on you.
No thanks,
Yeah,
yeah.
they-
Yeah,
Oh,
They quit, yeah.
Yeah.
or they find out after they're elected, oh wait, I can't do this.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's good on our end to do that, to make sure that we've, you know, given all
Yeah.
opportunity, but provide as much information, and, you know, while in, not specific to this, but these type of things, a lot of times you'll hear talk of interest, but when it gets down to the nitty gritty
Yeah.
bones of it, you know, when people understand what that commitment looks like, so we get a better understanding. To your point is, you know, if we truly end up with one or two additional candidates that we, looking at, you know, holding a full election for, that's somebody that may not be fully invested and have their
Right.
heart fully in it, but it'd be good for us to know.
well, it's just mainly, right now, at this point, it's good to know that we can get out of the
Yeah,
contract
yeah.
with the firm if we need
Yeah.
to, without.
But that does make me think that we should probably take a look at the board bylaws,
Yes.
make sure that they're,
They're clean.
Yeah.
fairly current.
Yeah.
And,
And that had come up, and so I know Ashley made note of that. We've had a little bit of discussion about that, where the bylaws and the procedures
in
and some of the things
legislature and
in
things.
legislature stuff were not even lined up. So it is an actual appropriate time to do
You
that
know, one
after
of
the
the,
first of the year to line all
speaking
that
of
up.
that, and I just ran across it the other day, is that, and I think you had to, maybe you did, I don't know if you guys did, we had to take the ICD 700 and 900 and whatever, remember?
Oh, the
ICS.
ICCS, Incident Command.
Oh,
Yeah.
ICS?
yeah,
You did, didn't you? Kenny,
yeah.
you did, David, you did too, right?
Yeah, online.
So yes, that is part of staff schedule. In January, we're gonna take a hard look and start getting revised bylaws in front of the board. And then once we've agreed on that final draft, it takes 3 readings to get it approved.
Yeah.
So we want to have that done in time well before June. That way, when the next board takes
Seated.
is seated.
Because I don't
We've got
know
a
if
fresh set of
I don't know
bylaws.
if that was in there, and I don't know where that came from, but it's probably a good idea. Give you a pretty good understanding. I don't think, Carol, you did those, did you?
No, it would have been before her, I think, just
I
before.
don't remember.
You would remember if you did. Oh my God, yeah. I think there were 3 different ones, right?
Yeah,
Did that come because of grants, maybe?
No.
No.
Because I know sometimes they do, a lot of times to tie in, if you're gonna accept federal grants, then
No.
anything, okay.
No, I don't, I'm trying to remember how that.
Actually, it was. You're right. That
If you're gonna do a
if
SAFER
you were
grant,
getting, yeah,
AFG grant, FPPA grant, if you're
that
gonna
in
get those.
turn, you're supposed to be,
Yeah.
have your board cert.
Really?
Yeah.
So generally all personnel, boards, that type of thing.
I don't think that they were
We'll
real
make a
hardcore on it.
recommendation that in that like election, that FAQ thing, that you consider taking
Yeah.
the
I
ICS
can't remember
100 and
which ones
700.
it was. I've got
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see 100, 700.
100, 700,
maybe
900
800,
maybe?
It
maybe
was,
800,
yeah, the
900 or
emergency.
something. Yeah.
Disaster,
There's the generic one, and then there's one specific, I think, for boards.
Yeah.
including the board of trustees.
Yes, I've taken mine.
Have you?
I got
Okay.
mine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's 170.
I've got
Anyway.
all of them, so.
Yeah.
While we're doing all that, might as well make sure it's all in there, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we want, that can be a requirement of the bylaws.
Well, that's what I
Yeah.
mean. If, as long as we're doing it, that's,
Mhm.
that probably should be in it while we're having to redo it. That should probably be a requirement, so.
Sure. Yeah, we'll look into that as we do all that. then.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes even just good information to know
Yeah.
how to do that, right?
Yeah.
Understanding.
So at the Wednesday board meeting, then anticipate there will be a resolution that will designate Sue Blair as the designated election official, and then designate that we'll be conducting a polling place election. So you'll remember in the last board meeting that you authorized the contract for services for that specific firm, but now we're gonna authorize the resolution or present a resolution for authorization that will move us into that official election phase.
Right.
Technically, our deadline isn't until the end of January to approve that resolution, but due to the current interest in people already ready to submit their nominations, we want to be prepared and ahead of the game so that we can start accepting those self-nominations as of January 1.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay. Line of credit update.
So I was hoping by this point we'd have specific timing, but we're, last night, I just double checked the last of the email from there. So they're finishing all the paperwork. We had shared with them that we have a board meeting on December 8th, that if there was anything that specifically we needed to bring forward to that piece of it, we passed the resolution already to do that, to authorize it. So we simply feel like what we're probably going to end up in with is a couple actions that'll take place. That we will look at moving the impact fee account from Points West to the First National Bank Omaha to establish that banking relationship with them. So that would take work on your parts, and then once the paperwork is actually ready for the final piece of signing that, they would be signing that as well.
Okay.
And so those things will happen. So
Okay.
I don't know, not sure that it'll be done by the 8th, but what they had guaranteed before was everything should be done and in place and ready to go before the 15th.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
so we're gonna fall kind of in that time window. So we'll provide more information as we know more on that. And so they're kind of finalizing all the paperwork and all the stuff they need to do from there, so.
Yeah.
And then they have a committee that just does a final review of
Yeah.
that, is kind of the way they shared that, so.
Okay. And so then back to fire chief recruitment firms.
Yes. So as we shared it, just in the budget, we wanted to make sure we had a placeholder for that. We just wanted to, from the last board meeting, I just kind of talked about a little bit, hitting a pause going forward into January on there. And we just wanted to make sure that the board was clearly aware that there are some firms that are interested. There's some firms, one specifically that had reached out and would like to at least make some public comment or potentially offer opportunities for presentation. And knowing that the board was thinking about maybe holding off or maybe looking at an opportunity to either do the stuff internally, just as we shared, there's a time frame that's tied into the interim positions specifically from that legal piece of it, that it has to either be done by that point or another board action taken to post and do that forward. So we just wanted to kind of give it one opportunity to have any last bit of discussion if you needed to, or give any other direction if we wanted to at least potentially set up something for a presentation so that you could ask questions about, could you scale it at some level if you felt like to reduce costs? If the cost piece of it was the concern, could we do some type of scaling where they could do a portion of it, but a portion of it could be done internally.
Right.
And
Well,
provide
it's
some
a
opportunities for that.
huge range in costs of the three firms, and I'm only familiar with the one that I recommended, and I've talked to them personally and know them. But I guess personally, I don't want to, I know we've got this 6-month time limit, and I don't personally want to feel like we're under this pressure that we can reset the clock if we have to. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And if we feel like we're getting close, and I don't want to feel pressured.
Sure.
I think that's the last thing that we should do. I mean, that's just me talking, but, normally when you make decisions under pressure, they're usually not good.
Right.
So I don't want to do this under pressure. If we have to reset the clock, then we'll reset the clock. I just don't know that we need to be, under a time limit to do this. I mean, there's a huge, when you look at those proposals, there's a huge spread in costs for what you're getting. That was not the main reason, but that was a reason why I didn't think I was in a real big hurry to choose somebody without doing a heck of a lot of investigating.
Well, and
committing a lot of money.
it would be nice to have presentations to find out what they're offering for those different ranges of cost. So, yeah, I think
And I think that helps slows the process down a little bit too by giving the firms an opportunity to provide a formal presentation, because if we're doing it for one, we should certainly open the opportunity for all three.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And so I agree, Director Sarno, that by slowing the process down, it allows the board to have a more thoughtful approach towards making a decision about if selecting a recruitment firm is the best idea for the district, and gives us a chance to absorb any information that we get in from JVG. So as we talk about making potential budget amendments in the first quarter of 2022, realistically knowing, what our range is for that kind of hiring process,
Right.
whether we do it internally or externally.
Right.
So-
Well, and we may, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just was curious, what's the time frame? If we do this internally, what's the time frame? How long do we have to post a position for?
Well, that depends on, what approach the board wants to take. Do you guys want to have an open house process? Do you want to, it just depends on how in-depth of a hiring process you want to take on internally. Do we want to try and take on that consultant approach where we have a couple of open houses and introduce the public to potential candidates? Or do we just do the 30-day posting?
That's what I wondered.
Yeah.
What is
And go
the
that
absolute
route.
minimum?
Director Reed, I apologize. Do you remember what legal counsel stated the posting time was for candidates? I think it was 30 days.
I don't think it was that long.
No, it wasn't.
I think
Wasn't
it
it
was
only
15,
14
it was
days?
14 or 15.
I think it was 14 days. It seems like a weird number. I thought it was 14 days.
So
Wasn't it?
I would have to go back and look. Director.
Yeah.
I think it's less than
I'm sure I
30.
have
Yeah.
it in my notes, but yeah, I think it
It's-
was 14 days.
For
With the
finalists.
parameters and the
With,
job description, salary ranges,
Yes.
and time
Yeah.
period.
yes.
Yeah.
So I'll
And
have
you've
it.
got, what caught us last time was the time period where you have to have the finalists
You
up
had
for
to-
review
Yes.
by
So
the
that's
public.
that's another part.
Yes.
that
And I
we-
think it was 28 days? So it was weird like that.
Yeah,
but
it was longer.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
hadn't planned on it last time.
Because
and
the new,
Yeah.
the newer, those
Right.
are some of the newer laws.
Right.
So we would, ideally, we would post the job description for a period of time, whether it's just internally and externally. So you would have a, 14 to 30-day time frame on that for anybody to submit for the job posting itself. And then there's the posting requirement for the finalists. So I think that's where
That
we're
was the
confused.
14-day
Yeah.
period was, you had to make public,
The finalists.
who the finalists are, and that's a 14-day time period, and,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we don't have, like I think I stated before, we don't have to hire anybody. We don't have to use them,
A consultant.
a consultant. We don't have to, we can post it, we have to legally post it,
Yes.
obviously, do the things we have to do legally.
I mean, I guess.
But we can do this internally. We can review applications, or we could hire somebody just to review applications and make recommendations. We can do any, it's like at least the one firm I'm familiar with, they can do like a cafeteria style. They can.
Your menu of
you can
services,
pick
if you will.
You can pick
Yeah.
and choose what you want. If you want them to just do certain things, and maybe these other ones do too. So, I think we have a lot of options. And I don't think we need to be tied into any one thing, and I think giving ourselves more time is definitely
Yeah,
is what my feeling is.
I agree, and I just feel like it's a lot of money to hire a recruitment. I mean, it's gonna cost a lot of money. What if we had somebody right here that we don't have to search the country all over and go through, we have to post it, I understand we have to go through the steps.
Well, and we have to do what we're required to by
Yes,
law.
I understand.
But that doesn't cost us anything.
No.
Which is a great,
That's
I mean,
my
that's
point.
right? I mean,
Well, there is still some
what-
cost
I mean,
associated, but
well, when I
it's,
say anything compared
Yeah.
to $50,000,
Yeah.
it doesn't cost us anything.
And all the
But I mean,
brain
there's some
damage
minimal costs to that.
associated with it.
Right,
We really have, we're in a cash crunch here.
yeah.
We have to be careful. Personally, I think we could look far and wide and not find anybody better than somebody that's right here.
And I think that's the big difference between the hiring process this time compared to the previous one.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
were starting.
we were kind of in a
agree.
position the last time where we had to cast a
Sure.
wide net.
We did.
Yeah, it was the first paid chief.
Well, and I think we sort of, I think we lucked out a little bit with that firm.
did.
I think the timing,
Oh, yeah,
everything
the-
sort of came together for us with that, and we
Yeah,
were
the
very
state
fortunate,
chiefs
so,
group.
yeah.
Yeah.
so I guess the question and the direction for staff that we're looking for is the one consultant firm did request to have Zoom access to provide public comment at the next board meeting, but if the board is open to at least having presentations by the three firms, we would contact them and say, you may consider waiting until January when we have a work session for a formal presentation to our board of directors, just to receive the information.
And make them aware that if they come to us as public invited to be heard, they're only gonna get 3 minutes or whatever it is.
That's correct.
They'll be very limited.
And we thought it was important to provide this opportunity here, and the reason I want to make sure we put on there is an opportunity for you guys to have open discussion about this. We knew that during the board meeting, as we presented before, it kind of gets into a place where you're feeling like, do we want to have that open discussion around, not that we're hiding anything, but it's harder to have that during a board meeting
Yes.
phase versus a work
Right.
session type thing
Right.
where you can have that
Sure.
kind of discussion, so.
Which I guess in turn with that, Chief Patterson, do we have time to do this?
Yes, yeah, I'd say
Okay.
we have time to do that. Yeah.
I mean, you've had, what, about a month now
Yeah,
to
yeah, couple
check us
months,
out?
yeah, couple months, yeah. You guys are all aware of, and that's that piece about just making sure, and not to feel like you're under a time crunch, but there are timelines associated with that. We don't want to didn't want to do anything that gets us behind it, or, if there are firms that are interested, to be able to make sure you can at least present that, so, whether that you want the à la carte or the buffet style, or if there's some option along the way that just makes sure that you've met all the legal obligations you need to do, and do that piece, and get an opportunity to at least field some candidates and make an educated decision on where you want to go from the steps forward, so.
Well, and theoretically, we could have a change in board, and they may want to be involved in that
That's
process,
true.
and they should be.
Yeah.
You're right,
So,
David.
it's
I think
easy
from a
to-
time, and it just depends on your time frame piece, right? And again, not that
Yeah.
you want to be pressured and rushed, but I think the timing of the 6-month window will close before the board election piece happens, so just,
Yeah.
if we look at.
6 months ends in March,
Right.
so
Yeah.
the election will be after.
Right.
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And wasn't there's some kind of monetary constraint with keeping the interim chief longer than 6 months? What was that?
It's not a monetary constraint, it's just the interim position is contract limited. We can only have an interim position for so many months. And then we have to either go through the interim hiring process again or go through a permanent hiring process prior to the interim position expiring. So we don't want to, we just kind of want to get the feel of the board. You can certainly take your time with the process. This just tells us how we need to build out those timelines. So if we need to be prepared to post the interim position again, we can certainly do that. We just need to know like what the feeling is of the board about, how much information do you want, how long do you want to take for the process, and we don't want you to feel rushed. We just want to make sure that you have all of the information possible to make the best decision possible and provide the best representation to the community as well.
So is this an appropriate place, time, everything else to state my opinion?
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's a
Yeah.
work session.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I have been very impressed with what Chief Patterson has done in a very short time. I can't imagine we could find anybody anywhere that would do a better job. And it seems silly to spend a whole lot of time, money, and brain damage interviewing people. I know we have to do the legal process. I understand that. But I would, if he would accept it, I would be very comfortable, anxious to hire Chief Patterson as our chief.
Well, and if that's the position that the board would like to take, we could certainly start that permanent fire chief hiring process sooner rather than later. But we do have to do the transparency part where it's posted.
Yeah,
And we don't even know if you want to do this for,
Well, but,
Yeah.
but
10 years.
all we could do,
Yeah.
if that is the desire of the board, then there would be only one way to find out, and that would be to make an offer.
And you'd have to, and then we can, what we
But-
can do is start the time, the calendar for you. Staff could work on that piece and going, okay, here's the, based off the current contract position, this would be the end date. And then
Right.
these are the, required times for postings and doing those things and kind of start working that backwards to allow you then to look at, make
know
that,
what
make that
our
sort of
Well,
deadlines
here,
decision. on how you wanna go
my
forward.
thinking is I'm like 110% agreement with Carol, but what I would like to do is to have us, at some point, we're gonna have to do it anyway, is
yeah,
post for the
we
position.
have to post it.
Oh, yeah,
And post it sooner rather than later.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, why not? We gotta have to do it anyway.
Right.
I mean, we pretty much know pretty much everything about this position, for the most part. So why don't we just post it? We're gonna get a bunch of applications. I feel confident enough, maybe about, not myself, but at least the competency of this board, to look at some applications and resumes, that we could come to a consensus. I again feel can't agree with you more, and I've talked. So I feel confident I'm not putting the cart before the horse here, but I'm totally on board with doing our due diligence and posting it. I don't know why we can't post it sooner rather than later, and do our due diligence in reviewing what we get back thoroughly and very competently in how many ever sessions we would need to review what we get back. And then go from there.
Regarding your comment about the new board might want to have, to me, it would make more sense to have the chief in place. Because everybody starting in new at the same time, I think would not be the best thing.
I see your point, but it seems a little fishy. Well, they just put a new chief on right before we got on.
But
You
that
know,
was
somebody
our
could
Well,
just
but if you
throw
think
that
about
back in
it,
your face.
it's been already
Yeah.
the fourth month of an opening, so.
Right, yeah.
And
I
isn't
think
that our
I think
job?
this board
Yeah.
owes it to fill that
Yeah.
opening
Oh.
regardless.
If any position gets filled,
Yeah.
it's that one. But, yeah.
Yeah, we really can't, well, short of extending the interim position, we can't delay hiring a chief
Right.
until the new board is seated. So, I mean, that's just the timing of the situation. So on that topic, is everybody intending to run again? Everybody that's up for reelection?
I am,
David?
yes.
Carol?
I've been considering not, but I'm not, right now I am going to run again.
Okay, just curiosity. I'm gonna run one more time.
We've only heard that 20 times.
One more marathon before you hang up the
Yeah.
running shoes, huh?
Yeah, I don't, and it's only a 3-year term this time, so.
Could
Once a
probably
month.
make it another 3 years.
So I guess I've heard mixed opinions today. First it was, we want to take our time and slow down, and
I know.
then I heard we want to hurry up and post. So
Well,
what, does the board want to sit on this
I
for another?
still think we need to have presentations from the firms. And, you know, after that point, we can determine whether we want any services or no services. But I just think it's worth hearing what they have to say, and we may find that there are some things that they could help with that we don't want to put the time into. So, because we can't, staff already has their hands full with day-to-day business. I don't think we can ask staff to do a lot of the work.
Well, they're gonna, regardless of when we post, they're gonna do the posting. I mean, unless, I don't think any of us are they?
Unless you looked at that à la carte menu, if you will, and just said this firm could do the posting and collect and
Yeah.
do this piece for you. It's just, and it's those options you have. And I
Yeah.
think if you're thinking again of timing to, today we won't make a decision.
Right.
But, you know, leaving here, if you're thinking about that piece, I think if you look at, you know, again, the calendar working backwards, I don't think that making a decision in January on how you want to go, knowing that if you do that, then doing postings in January would give you, plenty of time probably to meet both of your timeframes of posting for long enough, review finalists, notification of finalists, and being able to make a decision that hopefully doesn't feel rushed, but would end up before the
Yeah.
end of the interim date. Just kind of spitballing some time frame of that. And then looking at how that would happen, whether it's you guys putting together or whether it's a firm putting together, and doing just a portion of that work.
Yeah.
Well, for what it's worth, Director Reed makes a good point with the election coming up. The public perception of at least hearing and taking in the information would serve the board well.
Yeah. You're not doing something just in-house that didn't. Right.
right.
It would show that you're taking the approach of hiring the CEO level position from multiple angles, looking at all of the angles and all of the options to provide the best value to the taxpayer.
Well, we would, yes, I agree with you, but we would be doing that anyway, just with the normal, what we're required to do legally to post the position.
Correct.
To take applications ourselves. I mean, we don't necessarily have to hire a recruitment firm.
That's correct.
That's correct. To Ashley's.
So we have to do all of that.
But I think to Ashley's point, going a step above of what we legally have, we're just doing the bare minimum because we legally have to do the bare minimum. It would be better to show the community that we're looking at it from all aspects.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, getting, having them give like interviewing them, yeah.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, we could say, we're being better stewards of your money by not spending $55,000 of your money too,
That's
when we
a
feel we
minimum.
can make a good decision based on the board.
Yes.
And that's, I mean, that ultimately is the responsibility of this board, is being the stewards of their tax money. So,
And it will give you a little bit of time to not be put on the spot and
Yeah.
consider the true
Yeah.
ramifications of being stuck with
Make
this for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because we have, you know, a couple of wild cards out there right now with between the election and the recruitment. And then seeing how things move forward with the title board as to what, you know, 2022 is going to look like in 2023. So I think that taking, you know, at least taking in the information shows a good faith effort. Whether what you do with the information, you're correct, Director Sarno, that's completely up to the board to decide.
Well, it's not like we don't know what they're going to do. We have a very, thanks to you, a very complete, you know, written proposal from those firms from the last meeting.
No, I didn't think they were, some of them weren't all that complete, so,
Oh,
I don't know, that
I
was
thought they were.
my opinion. Some were more thorough than others, so.
But at the end of the day, they'll be providing some free advice and guidelines about how you could potentially make adjustments to your internal hiring process, some ideas that you may not have thought about if you decide to take it on yourself, about how you may want to formulate the job description or potential areas for posting, or, you know, what that looks like, or they may have suggestions that we may not have thought of.
That was kind of my thought, is we could at least pick their brains.
You know, use them as a template for how you want to do your process. And then the other consideration to take in mind too was during the interim hiring process, the staff was very vocal about being participants in that process. And so I, you know, admire that the board is willing to take on that process themselves, but so that we're more organized and better prepared for this permanent position, you know, having an idea of what that looks like ahead of time, you know, if you want to have staff involved in those hiring panels, and then, you know, how many, and having all of those details worked out on the front end instead of getting knees deep into it and then trying to make those decisions. That way we look well organized and like we've got our best foot forward in this hiring process. So if we do take it on ourselves, we look extremely professional doing it.
And I'm sure staff will want input again, and they deserve that opportunity. So.
So I got a hypothetical for you.
Yeah.
Say the job was offered, do you have any idea how long before you would retire out of that job, or, because I mean, if it's,
That's a good
Yeah.
question.
I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
Because I'm
I
going through that process myself right now.
I feel just based off of age and time, I feel like I know I've got, you know, viewed a handful more years working me, and then I think my wife would make sure that
Yeah.
I don't work anymore after that. I failed miserably at retirement so far.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't hear what.
So I feel like I got at least a few to a handful more work years in me. I guess it'll also depend on both of my kids being fully employed and off the payroll too. Yeah.
Probably looking at the ladder,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's what I feel like a bit. Yeah.
Well, I just hate to point you, and then 6 months later,
Oh yeah.
and I don't want to put you on the
Yeah,
spot
no,
either.
exactly, and I think that what's nice about it, you know, giving yourself a little bit more time.
Right.
You know, be all honesty has that factor in there as well. And when I retired from the city of San Jose, it was a real tough call, but there was some leadership changes that were going to go, and I just felt like if I wasn't going to be there for long enough to be a part of it through the whole and kind of usher that all the way through, and so, you know, the opportunity was there. It just seemed like it made more sense as they were going to hire a new chief and one other deputy chief, and we thought, well, you know, I'm not going to ride all that through for the next handful of years. So it just made sense to kind of step aside and let them fill those roles from that piece of it. So I fully see that and completely understand that the time, money, and everything invested in that, same like that we talked about with the board. You
Yeah.
could have everybody go through this, invest in a board election for one other candidate that then, gets elected, but says, oh, I didn't realize this is what it was like, and
Yeah.
resigns from there, so. I'm sensitive to that, where the budget stands, and
Yeah.
people and personnel changes and all that stuff, so.
Okay, does anybody have anything else?
Not me.
So we'll, at least from leaving this part, we'll talk with the firms that are out there to let them know about, potential opportunity during a work session in January. If that seems right to make some presentations.
Sounds good to me.
Yep. And are we going to limit the time that they're given for their presentations?
Yes,
Okay.
we'll give them a time frame.
Yeah.
So I guess, Director Sarno, you had expressed, wanting to do a work session regarding the information from JVG before January 1. Taking a look at the calendar, our board meeting is the 8th. By the time we get the information back and can consume it, that's probably going to take us into the last 2 weeks of December.
Do what now?
If we were to do a work session to discuss the items that come from JVG,
Well, it depends on more what
Right.
you and Sue and I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah,
We'll
I think
sort of
that- I
go
think
from
that's-
there
I think
then.
that's the
mean,
case, so.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
So just trying to decide if maybe we do a work session in early January for all of those items, depending on how urgent it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
that's probably fair. I think we could,
Yeah.
have that on our target frame. And other than what we see, I don't know
Yeah.
if we have
I
to do
think
a
it's
full work
totally
session.
dependent on what we're able to
Yeah.
learn from that,
Yeah. Yeah.
as to how urgent
we
we
can,
would need
and
to
we're-
be.
we can work through that.
Yeah.
What that looks like.
I think so.
Do the directors have any schedule challenges for the remainder of December or plans in January?
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna be gone from the 17th until the 22nd, as long as I can get back in the country.
Are you going to Canada?
Yeah.
Oh,
Of course, staff will always make accommodations for the board of directors, but we
Yeah.
do
Zoom.
have staff that
Oh,
have
God.
Yeah.
holiday schedules as
Yeah.
well, so we may have
Yeah.
some limitations
Yeah.
about, trying to put as much information together as
Yeah.
possible.
Okay.
And we'll
So-
definitely, as that comes through and get an opportunity to share there, maybe that, we'll see where that
Yeah.
comes from there, and how best to sort of take the next steps piece
Yeah.
of it.
Okay.
Whether,
So we'll reach out to the firms and schedule a January work session for
Sounds good.
presentations.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
December 17th is not good for me either,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the way the weeks fall with all that, the kind of the holiday stuff, all of a sudden it is, just because of
It
where the
gets
holidays
really-
fall.
Yeah.
It's really impacted, so.
So anticipate receiving your Wednesday packet information by tomorrow afternoon, no later than Tuesday morning. We were waiting on information from today to
in case we-
wrap some of that information up in case we needed to make any changes, so I apologize, and I've also been out ill.
Yeah.
So if we have these firms, say, if they only give, like a 10 or 15-minute presentation, why don't we just do it during a regular board
That's kinda
meeting?
what I
Yeah,
was
we have the
thinking, too.
insurance guys take more time than that.
But they'll want like 30 minutes. Those consultant firms will probably want 30 minutes apiece, 20 to 30 minutes.
Oh.
They're gonna wanna put their best foot
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, we can look at it and assess kind of what they, what they have
Okay.
and what that looks like, and
All right.
see if that, we haven't even talked too much about what has to be on January's board meeting yet, to see if that, there's a possibility. We'll look at that and see
I
what
mean, if
that.
they each had 20 minutes, that's an hour. If we don't have much else going on, we wouldn't have to.
If we don't have.
Yeah, I know, I'm trying to think
much
what, yeah.
That's right.
But
I think
yeah.
what typical January
Yeah.
would be.
Well, anyway,
Yeah.
whatever, it's just a suggestion.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
mean,
if
we
they-
alleviate having to come up with another time that would work for everybody, so.
If they need more than 20 minutes, we'll have to do a work session, but.
Yeah.
Well, and there's pros and cons to doing those sorts of presentations in a regular board meeting versus in a work session as well.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, well, just a thought.
Sure, when we can, as we get the information from them and get a real feel on what,
Yeah, what
and what it
works
looks
out.
like, and, you know, are they all in a position where they want to be in-person presentation or some virtual format, and we
Yeah.
could look at what that
Yeah.
looks like and what our calendar looks like for January.
Okay.
Provide you some options.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you for the time on Sunday.
You're
Chance to go
welcome.
through this
Thank you
and
guys
talk through
for
this, yeah. Thanks to Staff for
giving up your Sunday mornings.
Yep. A couple, Friday evening and a Saturday evening, we had some fun town stuff, so that was actually really fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I was telling Rachel and Ashley, this is the first time I've ever seen the Christmas parade. For so many years, I was cooking chili.
Oh, yeah.
Were you at the parade?
Yeah,
Oh, did you?
yeah.
Oh,
And it
yeah,
wasn't,
we should
the
do
weather
the
was
official
nice.
It was
adjournment.
nice,
We did-
wasn't
it?
I missed-
Yes.
I know, we did.
It was
Okay,
beautiful.
let's adjourn this meeting at 10:53.
Thank you.